Jack Smith and the special counsel march forward, and we're wondering what the status is of various prosecutions throughout the country. We know that there's a current indictment underway in Florida, but there are rumors now that there may be a superseding indictment. This would be an indictment that replaces the current indictment and would add new charges. And in many ways, it's like a restart of the case. So all the conversations we've been having about the trial being in December or Trump pushing it further into January or early next year might all become moot if there is a superseding indictment, because then we've got a whole new slate of charges to attend to. And that's only out of Florida. We're also keeping our tabs on what's happening out of DC and other jurisdictions. We've long speculated here that Donald Trump would be facing another indictment, and I think in many ways the more serious indictment, because of the fact that it is in DC and because they're very hysterical about Trump in that jurisdiction. But it might not just be Trump who gets charged. This story came out from the Independent, and they have a very logo, don't they? It's very logo. So you see they give us headline here: prosecutors are prepared to hit Trump and his allies with new charges, the sources say. They could bring, look at this, 30 to 45 additional criminal charges against Trump in the coming weeks. We've already heard that Bill Barr said he expects this thing to come out in summer, and it is summer. The Independent has learned. They've got inside sources as per usual. The leaky DOJ just leaks and leaks and leaks. So they tell us the Department of Justice is prepared to seek indictments against multiple figures in Trump's orbit and may yet bring additional charges against Trump, the Independent has learned. According to sources familiar with the matter, the department has made preparations to bring what is known as a superseding indictment. That's coming out of Florida. A second set of charges against an already indicted president against Trump in the Southern District of Florida. But prosecutors also may choose to bring additional charges against Trump in a different venue, depending on how they feel the case they brought against him is proceeding. Here's the story. The Independent understands that prosecutors' decision on whether to seek the additional charges from a grand jury and where to seek them will depend in part on whether they feel the Trump-appointed judge overseeing the case, Eileen Cannon, is giving undue deference to the twice impeached, now twice indicted former president. I mean, they always like to just twist that one in there, don't they? He's twice impeached, you know. They could say he was twice acquitted or he was twice not removed. The Senate didn't convict him on either of those. They could have said that twice. Or they could have called it the historic double prosecution of political enemy, right? They could have changed this in a way, but they are partisan hacks. So the team of federal prosecutors working under Special Counsel Jack Smith is currently prepared, to add an additional 30 to 45 charges in addition to the 37 count indictment that's already been brought against Trump. That would be on a superseding indictment on the same Florida court or in a different district. Now, this is where this gets interesting, because we have the audio tape, which was recorded in Bedminster, New Jersey, which we have spent a lot of time on earlier this week. They were there in Bedminster, which was not Florida. So the indictment was in Florida. So could Bedminster, New Jersey be another jurisdiction? Well, maybe, but we also learned from other leaks that apparently they don't even have that document, that he was allegedly waving around with the paper shuffling all over the place. In either case, they would do so using evidence against Trump that has not yet been publicly acknowledged by the department, including other recordings prosecutors have obtained which reveal Mr. Trump making incriminating statements. So is CNN going to get their hands on those too? The Independent tells us that it's also understood from whoever they're talking to. Again, it just is bananas how much information they get. Can we just, what is the prosecutors team? They should just start a Substack and just tell us what they're doing, because they're just telling other journos about it. It's understood that Mr. Smith's team is ready to bring charges against several of the lawyers who worked for Trump, including those who aided the ex-president in his push to ignore the will of the voters and remain in the White House despite having lost 2020. They're going to go after everybody, man. And what this is going to do is chill the legal community from aiding Trump and those lawyers, lest they be indicted. And if you're going to go after the king, you best not miss, as they say. So here, if they're going to go after Trump, they might as well go after the entire inner circle, so nobody even thinks about even looking at Trump or voting for Trump. One of those figures, as we talked about previously on the show this week, Rudy Giuliani. Giuliani, whose law license was suspended as a result of making false representations, reportedly participated in a voluntary interview with prosecutors working under supervision of Mr. Jack Smith, Justice Department Special Counsel, who brought the charges. There's Rudy getting wheeled around in the airport. It's further understood that Mr. Giuliani's cooperation with prosecutors was undertaken as part of what is known as, quote, a queen for a day deal, under which the ex-mayor can avoid a indictment for anything he tells the prosecutor during the interview, right? That's where people were saying he flipped. Yes, it was voluntary, but maybe it's so he doesn't get indicted. This will allow the disgraced former federal prosecutor called Giuliani, who was a hero for years, to avoid some charges, but a source familiar with the matter said that Smith's office, quote, most definitely brings some charges against Giuliani. So he's under the gun too. So when you're under the gun, you don't know what people start to say, right? This is the big thing. What happens if Giuliani flips and says, no, Trump was like banging my head into the wall. Find the votes! Find them! The Independent has also learned that Mr. Giuliani's proffer session with the prosecutors dealt mainly with Trump's machinations during the period which he sought to remain in the White House for a second term. Giuliani's political advisor, Ted Goodman, said the ex-Trump lawyer meeting with the prosecutors was entirely voluntary, conducted very professionally. There's nothing more to say. And so this is just one part of a much bigger probe. Fani Willis, the biggest Fanny of all the Fannies in Georgia. I mean, she is the attorney general, so district attorney. There's not much people who are bigger. I don't think there is a bigger Fanny in Georgia than the district attorney, Fani Willis, just to be clear. But she is expected to also bring multiple indictments, which could be unveiled as early as next month when her grand jury probe continues forward. So the pieces are being moved into place, just like on a chessboard. You've got New York, Florida, you come into DC, up into Georgia, and you just ensnare the whole East Coast with various prosecutions. And what you want to do is really elevate these prosecutions in various battleground states. Georgia's a pretty good one. So Florida's a pretty good one. So you have these states where they are battling Trump in the news all the time. He's being prosecuted again. He's being prosecuted again. He's another court date, another court date. It's like death by 1,000 cuts. And you move them around throughout the rest of the country. And hey, maybe one judge does something kind of crazy. Or maybe some conditions get imposed and Trump violates those conditions. And then things really escalate very quickly. So you can see why in American history, why we don't do this stuff. But the Democrats have just been shattering the norms. They told us they were returning to norms, but things are getting a little bit squirrely. What happens if a judge just says Trump can't even leave custody? The New York Times is confirming a lot of this. They say a grand jury has issued subpoenas to even more people involved in the case. So they're going out. Trump's already been indicted, but they're still subpoenaing people, which means we're probably not even done with Florida yet. 3 weeks after Trump was indicted, a federal grand jury in Miami is still investigating aspects of the case. So there will be a superseding indictment. In recent days, grand jury has issued subpoenas to a handful of people who are connected with the inquiry. While it remains unclear who received the subpoenas and the kind of information that they were seeking to obtain, it is clear that the grand jury has stayed active and they are still digging, even after they've been indicted. So Trump could face more charges on this. Prosecutors often continue investigating strands of the case, which is, of course, exactly what they're doing here, trying to get after anything they can. We're learning more about who may have been in the room at the Bedminster conversation. ABC News tells us that the top Trump campaign aide was identified as somebody who was in the room. Apparently, her name is Susie Wiles. She's one of Trump's most trusted advisors. And we're all asking ourselves, are these people working with the government? Have they flipped? Are they, friendly witnesses for the prosecution? We don't know. But she's one of his most trusted advisors, was singled out as the PAC representative. So this is a different person in the second part of the indictment. Remember, there were two instances where Trump was allegedly waving around these documents. One was in front of Bedminster, New Jersey. This was another incident. In the indictment, Trump allegedly showed a classified map of an unidentified country, we don't know what that is, to Wiles while discussing the military operation that Trump said was not going well, while adding that he should not be showing the map to her and to not get too close. Remember that? Jack Smith, they say in the special counsel's investigation, is engaging in lies, said Trump's campaign spokesperson, and nobody for the special counsel's office wanted to comment on any of this. So it's been interesting. Donald Trump apparently wanted the documents back even after the indictment came through, which is just hysterical. Apparently, the Rolling Stone says he wanted them back. He said, well, I'm being indicted. And they said, that's okay. They're still my boxes. Just because this corrupt DOJ is indicting me doesn't mean it's legitimate. So can we get the boxes back? Rolling Stone said last month, Trump's lawyers told him he was on the cusp of a federal indictment, but he still, quote, wanted my documents and my boxes back, asking his lawyers if they could get them from the federal government. And again, the Rolling Stone has another source with direct knowledge of the matter and two other people who were briefed on it. It's like, what? Do these people have like an Instagram page or something? Are they on a chat room? They're all just talking. It's like three people here, according to a source with direct knowledge and two other people briefed on it. The lawyers, it's hilarious either way. In one of the many conversations with Trump, he said it was illegal. They could no longer have his documents. And I think this is actually great. It's Trump being consistent. And Trump, by the way, is the only person here who has ever been a president of anybody who's writing any of this stuff. So I think he knows what his powers are better than anybody else. So he says that I've got total power to declassify declassify this stuff. He's the only person who's actually been president. And so even though the corrupt DOJ and FBI will come raid his house, he still says, well, you know, they're still corrupt. So I still am entitled to my boxes, right? This was Trump earlier last week explaining the president has total and absolute power.
Well, it is true. I mean, it is true, isn't it? In other words, whatever documents the president decides to take with him, he has the absolute right to take them. He has the absolute right to keep them, or he can give them back to NARA if he wants. He talks to them like we were doing, and he can do that if he wants. That's the law, and it couldn't be more clear.
That is the law. That's the argument we've been making here, that as the chief executive officer of the executive branch, that this classified documents conundrum implicates a separation of powers problem if Congress can dictate the terms of Trump's library book checkouts. So I like this theory. I like this thesis and how Trump is now communicating in that manner. And I think that this is going to get a lot worse before it gets any better. These people are not letting down. You know, it's like the first step. They say, all right, well, they're trying to tip over the vending machine. They give it a nudge. No, that wasn't enough to do it. We indicted Trump the first time and nobody cares. Everybody's actually supporting him more. So they're going to try to nudge it again a little harder. They're trying to get it to tip over, but we don't know if that's going to happen. So they just think that more indictments, more impeachment, more illegitimate prosecutions will work. We'll continue to cover.